Welcome to July's episode of Loadsmart's First Look. This will be a monthly series that dives into the domestic freight market, the economy as a backdrop to the trucking industry, and the latest developments in technologies that are changing the supply chain. With me today for our first episode is Jim Nicholson, the VP of Carrier Sales. Our second guest, of course, our fearless leader and CEO, Ricardo Salgado. So I guess to dive right in, Jim, I was hoping to ask you the first question, more of a macro view. What are you seeing in the freight market?
Post Memorial Day, you really saw this gradual increase. And then as you got further into June, and just more states were opening up, more activity was coming back online. Really that acceleration increased to where you see today, which is volumes are at all-time highs, 20+% over prior years. And rejects and capacity continues to be very much constrained. Post July 4th, typically you see a drop off, but that absolutely is not the case this year. And to me, all seasonality trends in the market that typically follow 2020 is just out the window.
Could you speak to more specific markets and what you're seeing maybe in some of the hotter areas of the country?
One that we haven't really been seeing or talking too much about that I think is really interesting is the Mexico-U.S. cross-border, right? Laredo in Mexico is a top 3 trade partner, over $500 billion annually with the U.S. And Laredo is by and large, the largest entry to the U.S. from Mexico of 40%. But what we're seeing in Laredo is volumes are nearly double prior to 2 years. And you're also seeing some of this in El Paso and McAllen as well. But what does this mean is there's a severe backlog of what Mexico produces for the U.S.
So I wanted to ask Ricardo, a question that I've been getting from my customers is, how do you reconcile the freight industry reporting record volumes, record outbound tender rejection, which with the look of the everyday American that spending is down?
It's a fair statement and can be a bit confusing because typically economic activity is represented 2/3 by consumer spending. So given the uncertainty and unemployment that you're seeing, why on earth are rates up to the levels that they are right now, or why are volumes up 20% year over year? And it's around the end customers of trucking, and a big chunk of full truckload are essential services. Think about consumer staples, CPG essentials such as food, beverage, water, pharma. So maybe instead of eating out at a restaurant, for example, where you use ketchup to eat your fries, now you do that at home. You still consume that. So maybe you saw some shift from trucking being delivered that ketchup into a restaurant to going into groceries that ultimately ends up at your home. So net, things still need to move. We have been able to help through supplementing these movements through technology. So by digitizing, for example, the pipelines into shippers, by integrating into their transportation management system, that has allowed them to be much more efficient and procure capacity in a digital format.
That was, I think, a great take on the demand side. Jim, do you want to talk about how stimulus running out may be affecting what we're going to see capacity look like?
Total count of tractors did decline for the first time in quite some time in April. But that wasn't necessarily unexpected. It was less than 1% and actually rebounded back in June. And more recently, with the benefits of PPP that really helped truckload operators, we saw Class A truck sales increase 20% year over year. And another dynamic that's kind of interesting is the used truck 3 years actually was positive for the first time in quite some time. Right? I don't anticipate any sort of reduction in capacity in the market. So then it shifts to, okay, this is a demand story.
So I know that Ricardo has a spin class that he needs to get to. So I'll try and so we'll wrap it up. We'll wrap it up quickly. More than ever, the world's largest and most sophisticated shippers are leveraging technology to drive efficiencies in their supply chain. And there's been a lot of exciting developments. But Ricardo, I was hoping you could tell us a little bit more about what you're seeing.
We always believed, even pre-COVID, in the secular shift from brick and mortar analog to digital/online. And COVID has only accelerated that journey across most industries. And for us, it's exactly the same thing. We saw more integrations in Q2 of 2020 than all of 2019. So I would say that this is something that is getting the attention of transportation leaders. Thematically, what we see is transportation leaders were very focused on their primary goal, which was to get goods moved from A to B, and probably a little bit of technology. Now, that little bit of technology has expanded significantly.
Just wrapping it up. So, Jim, Ricardo, thank you so much for joining me. Very insightful. And we will see you guys next month on episode 2 of Loadsmart's First Look.